here this morning for an interesting deal. We're here because we all have a common need. Mankind is always looking for inspiration. And what I'm going to do here this morning is different. I don't have 55,000 slides. I don't have the collected works of mankind's art. I can't give you any keys to getting hired. I was a C average firefighter. I had a lot of lucky breaks. I'm here today. But we've always looked for inspiration, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about this morning. Mankind's always searched for positive motivation, a sense of affirmation that there's goodness in the world and that there's good to be found in the world. Today, our nation is desperately seeking good role models. We're desperately seeking that affirmation. We're looking for people that embody that goodness. Sadly, today, we find ourselves in a world where the folks we used to look up to, our traditional role models, those in our elite political class, our world-class athletes, and the entertainment world, seem to be out of touch with our sensibilities and lacking in that goodness. However, today more than ever, there's one group of people who people look to because they actually embody the values and virtues that they espouse. And that group of people is the fire service. Folks appreciate the fact that there still exists a group that to the man and to the woman live those values that we talk about. Firefighters are the people that people are looking to today for that goodness. You and I'm going to talk to you as if you're firefighters, because if you want to be a firefighter, you're going to become a firefighter. Henry Ford, who was an interesting character, he wasn't the brightest man in the world. He once said he'll make a car any color people want as long as it's black. Yeah, genius. How'd that work out for you? But he once said some really good things, and one of the things he said was, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And I'm going to tell you, everybody in this room right now is just as good a firefighter as I ever was, just as able a firefighter as I ever was, and you're going to make it. You're going to make it. You're going to become firefighters. Because if you're giving up your Sunday, and if you missed Mass, you're going to get a sermon now, so you didn't get out of anything. So just keep that in your mind. I am a firefighter. Walk like a firefighter, talk like a firefighter, think like a firefighter. Step up every chance you get. You have a choice every minute in this life to do something, to make a difference, to be good. The other day I was coming home from work, and I was walking by the lake, and I saw this lawyer drowning in the lake. And I thought for a minute I could go to a movie, or I could maybe take in a book. Just kidding. You have a choice. Honor those choices. That's what firefighters do. You're going to become the caretakers of the artifacts, the culture, and the legacy that is the American Fire Service. And our culture, her missions and traditions, are bound together by an intricate and well-developed set of core values and principles. To shepherd our culture requires many voices, and fortunately, the Fire Service is a very diverse group of individuals. And that diversity allows us to innovate and create when necessary, to find solutions when called on, and to endeavor always, always to restore calm to chaos. To do so, firefighters have to be mentally agile, morally grounded, and emotionally connected. We need to be well-trained and well-disciplined, and we must strive always, always for continuous improvement. And we will never get there. To do so requires that firefighters question everything. And so it shouldn't have come as a great surprise to me that I was recently asked to speak at an international conference as to why loyalty and service are a thing of the past in the fire service. To be absolutely clear, I could not disagree more with that statement. Loyalty and service are not a thing of the past in the fire service. Of our core values, loyalty ranks high, and selfless service is our keystone value today, it was yesterday, and it will be tomorrow. Loyalty in the fire service is not as simple as it is in other professions, industries, and callings. For us, it's about loyalty to oneself, one's community, one's organization, and most importantly, to one another. Like any institution, the fire service is not perfect. We have suffered our losses. We have stumbled occasionally and struggled with our own identity and our relevance. We've won the hearts and minds of our communities one day and then fallen way short of their expectations another. But never let it be said by an insider or an outsider that any true and loyal firefighter was ever disloyal or disrespectful of our values, that any honest and good firefighter ever besmirched the name of the fire service or was intentionally disloyal to the fire service or their community. For at our core are our values that define who we are. They're the inescapable measures of our character, and they require from time to be reinforced. As good stewards, we are required from time to tell stories about loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, integrity, honor, and personal courage. We tell these stories as much for others as we do for ourselves to provide us with that inspiration, to reaffirm our commitment to our values. So it's especially fitting here this morning that I share with you some of our stories and some other stories that embody our virtues and our values and that will come to life in the discussions we're going to have this afternoon as we talk about our mission, our visions, and our training. Every fire service member knows, every firefighter knows that no conversation about the fire service can be had without an understanding of service, and this conversation this morning is no different. But we must also say a word about loyalty. For loyalty provides us with that inner security we need to accomplish our mission, an unfaltering belief in one another, an unfaltering love for one another. All of us who've placed our lives, especially our military veterans in the room, in the hands of another, know that loyalty is the value that sustains us in life-threatening situations. And we know that we cannot expect loyalty without being willing to give it as well. We know that a leader can neither demand loyalty nor win it from their people by simply talking about it. The loyalty of firefighters is a gift they give you when and only when we train them well, we treat them fairly, and we live by the values we talk about. There is no loyalty fiercer than that of firefighters who've learned to trust their leaders, who have gone through tough fires with them together. Loyalty in battle was perhaps best described by, believe it or not, a French general named Bernard de Pique from the 1800s, who said this: 4 brave men who do not know each other well will not dare attack a lion, but 4 less brave, knowing each other well, therefore sure of mutual aid and reliability, will attack resolutely. And in a simpler time, Epicurus told us that it is not so much our friends' help that helps us as the confidence of their help. Firefighters fight fires for each other. Loyalty is commitment, and that loyalty manifests itself a lot more in deeds than it does in words. For a few moments, we're going to look at some stories of those who answered the call to serve and be humbled by the character of those who place selfless service and loyalty first. And one of the most significant examples of loyalty and selfless service comes to us from 1,000 men, very young men, I might add. And this is the story of one of those men. It was July 12th, 1940. The pilot was 28 years old. He was probably 8 years older than any of the other pilots. Yet despite his age, he was the rookie. Today was his first combat flight. And sitting in the cockpit of his Hurricane, vibrating in his seat as that powerful engine came to life, he prayed. He prayed fervently for courage and strength. His name was Billy Fisk. To his friends, he was known as the Yank. The Hurricane that he sat in today was new. Like him, it had never seen combat. The tight cockpit reminded him of a bobsled and reminded him of his days of racing bobsleds. His mind flashed back to winning his first Olympic gold medal in 1928. Exhilarated and shocked that at 16 years of age, he became the youngest man to ever win a gold medal. He thought about winning his second gold medal in 1932 in a new bobsled, much like the Hurricane he sat in today. Billy Fisk was an unofficial RAF pilot. You see, he had to pose as a Canadian in order to join the RAF. Although everybody knew he was an American, they let him in. Billy was the only member of a squadron they dubbed the Millionaires Club. And as his turn came, the rookie powered up that Hurricane and he lifted her gently into the sky. It is so important that every one of you new firefighters understand this young man's story. That every one of you young firefighters who are going to lead firefighters in the future understand the importance of this young man's story. You see, he was there by choice, as are all of us firefighters. And choice is the gift of freedom. It's a magnificent standard up to a point. Men have chosen freedom time and time again, and they have done it by proving they're willing to die for it. But that the freedom they want is not from unconstrained choice. Rather, it's the opportunity to express themselves, to enrich themselves, and to govern themselves in a world that's already been defined by a set of intuitively understood natural commitments. In an earlier time, we called these natural laws, natural commitments, nature's law, or God's nature's law. As Americans, we enshrine them in our revered Bill of Rights. Our fire service assures that these natural commitments exist in American society and are protected. Our service assures that people can assemble without fear, can go to work assured that they are protected, and can worship and travel in safety, knowing that firefighters are watching over them, always vigilant, always ready, respecting and protecting intuitively understood natural commitments. What young Fisk was fighting for in the skies over England was political liberty, which is the greatest gift a people can win for themselves. A gift which is threatened when social order is threatened. And social order is protected by the military, law enforcement, and the fire service. Fisk understood what he was fighting for, and so did his fellow pilots. They fought to maintain commitments that had taken centuries to create, but that we can lose in a generation. Freedom, political freedom, religious freedom would have been lost to the German socialists if those of lesser character who would gladly trade stability for freedom, security for liberty, had had their way. And it was even more significant for Fisk. You see, he was born the son of wealth and privilege in Chicago, and he understood what Hitler and his National Socialist Workers' Party were trying to destroy. And that was the gift of freedom, the ability to choose. And the Battle of Britain wasn't the first time that Billy stood up to Hitler. When asked to captain the 1936 U.S. bobsled team, he declined the honor, explaining he would not compete in Hitler's Germany and he would not be a guest in Hitler's Berlin, where those intuitively understood natural commitments had been destroyed and had been replaced with despotic, tyrannic socialism. Billy knew that back home people were calling him a traitor, that some people were calling for his arrest because there was a thing called the 1935 Neutrality Act that forbade Americans from even traveling to war zones, more or less fighting with the Canadians and the British. But none of that mattered to young Fisk, because it was values that drove him. It was his respect for those natural commitments. He understood that there are things like men and women like you are willing to fight and die for. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and freedom of association. Billy was fighting tyranny at the risk of his own freedom, his citizenship, and his very life. And so 27 days and 42 sorties later, we find Billy beginning his third combat sortie of the day. Having survived the Battle of Britain now for almost 4 weeks, he was one of the old salts. 10 minutes into his flight, he saw them. Cruising at 20,000 feet, he runs straight into 400 Hinkle German bombers and a swarm of Messerschmitt fighters, all heading straight for him. He switched his guns from safe to fire. A German Hinkle 111 came into his view. Around him, the air was filling with smoke, greasy parachutes, pieces of metal, screaming fighters. The radio was full of urgent voices, some smooth, some panicked. Billy's fighter roared in on that German bomber. He fired a short burst. The Hurricane shuddered as almost 200 303 bullets slammed into the side of that Hinkle. The Hinkle rolled a little on its side just before the right wing snapped off, and that's when Billy saw the tracers flying by his cockpit. Angry yellow little bits of light. Suddenly his cockpit erupted in fire as he tried to pull that hurricane's nose into the air. The hurricane was on fire and he was burning alive. He knew he should bail out. He was slipping in and out of consciousness and he was losing grip on the stick. But he also knew that if he bailed out, that would be one less hurricane in the fight. If he ejected to stop the burning, that would be one less plane against Hitler. So now 12 minutes from RAF Landing Field Biggins, he decided to bring that wounded aircraft home. Slipping in and out of consciousness, he guided that aircraft back to RAF Biggins. With the engines now quit, he went to make a landing and he slams into the ground hard, exploding the fuel tank. Again, the cockpit erupts in horrific fire. The horrified ground crew pulled a burning Billy Fisk from his own airplane. 2 days later, Billy Fisk, two-time Olympic bobsled champion, movie maker, man who founded the Aspen Ski Lodge, a millionaire who could have easily avoided war altogether, became one of the first Americans to die in World War II. On a cold and rainy August day in 1940, 6 members of the Millionaire Squadron carried him to his final resting place. On his coffin was the Union Jack and the Stars and Stripes. This brave young RAF aviator was one of 7 Americans who fought bravely in the Battle of Britain. The honor guard stood tall and proud, and taps were played quietly up on a hill. Over the coffin stood his mom and dad, devastated, wrecked by the fact that they'd lost their only and beautiful son, yet proud of his devotion to duty, proud that their son, raised in privilege, who could have easily avoided dangerous duty, just like every one of you, chose to do the things that would eventually claim his young life. This is loyalty. This is service. This is love. This is the type of loyalty that true firefighters understand. They understand that selfless service ensures our ability to assemble and move securely and freely. They know this is why we were called, to protect those intuitively understood natural commitments, to protect churches, to protect schools and places where liberty is celebrated. You here today are going to protect those commitments. You are going to protect society, the weak and the strong, the rich and the poor. You will do so as firefighters. You will exemplify good choices. You will become those role models that we're looking for. By your work, you are going to honor our profession and men like Billy Fisk, who are willing, like you, to risk their lives for strangers, who are dedicated, like you, to the service of their communities, and who will, like you, give your last full measure if another firefighter calls for your assistance. Today, there are those who would have you believe that great men like Billy Fisk no longer exist in our society, but that is a lie. Today, there are those among us who would have you believe that America's best days are behind her, and that is a lie. And today, there are those who would have you believe that character and virtue no longer matter, but that is a lie. Virtue and character do matter. So let me share with you a similar story. As the dust settled on September 11th, 2001, weary and dazed firefighters were searching through the rubble for any chance of survivors. Among those searching was a former NYPD police officer, now an FDNY firefighter, Chris Engeldrum. Chris also served in active duty in the U.S. Army and was deployed in 1990 as a paratrooper with the 82nd. On that tragic day in September, with his fellow surviving firefighters from Ladder 61 in the Bronx, Chris was searching among the rubble for his fallen brothers, and it was becoming growingly apparent with every passing moment that no one survived. As Chris was searching, one of the firefighters came across an American flag on the ground. Chris called out to Captain Dugan and asked where they could raise this flag. Captain Dugan grabbed a nearby ladder, threw it up against the light post, standing still in the rubble, and with Chris bucking that ladder, they raised that flag. This is not the iconic flag photo that you've all seen taken later that day. This was a flag raised moments after the collapse, while the dust was still heavy in the air, while the wounded were still looking for treatment, while the survivors were still struggling to rescue anyone that they could. This is the first flag that was raised over Ground Zero, a flag raised in the fog of war, in defiance of those who would try to hurt us, raised instinctively and loyally by firefighters, by men of courage and honor. Several weeks after 9/11, Chris would learn that members of his old brigade, the 27th, were being called to backfill for the legendary 69th New York Irish for duty in Iraq. Chris couldn't let his old teammates go without him, so he re-enlisted in the fight in 69th. Chris re-enlisted because a sense of loyalty, a sense of duty, a sense of honor, a calling to service. Chris re-enlisted because men like him, people like you, are always true to their character. On a miserably hot November 29, 2004, the armored Humvee carrying Chris, Specialist Wilfred Urbana, also a firefighter in civilian life, and another New York firefighter, Danny Swift, from Ladder 43, and 3 other soldiers was hit by an IED. Chris and Wilfred, both firefighters, both men of character, were killed. Chris was there because he couldn't let his comrades go fight without him. That same loyalty is expected. No, it's demanded from each and every one of us. That same commitment to service is expected from each and every one of us. The kind of loyalty and service that Billy and Chris exemplified by their devotion to our values. Chris Engeldrum became the first member of the FDNY to die in active military duty after 9/11. Chris became the first member of the 69th to die in active duty in Iraq. It is so painfully obvious that now as never before, you need to be those great role models. Now as never before, we need great people like you to fill the ranks of firefighters, men and women who are strong enough to live up to the values and principles that we espouse, because it is not easy to do. It is not the easy road. The philosopher Albert Pike once said, "What we have done for ourselves alone dies with us. What we have done for others and the world remains and is immortal." You see, there's many things you're going to do in life that matter, but nothing matters as much as that which you do for others. One last short story. You see, heroics don't skip generations. It's part of our American culture. And selflessness does not come and go in a society. It is perpetuated. Loyalty is not taught in books. It can only be learned from example. It was November 1965 in the hot insect-infested jungle of Vietnam in the La Drang Valley, and an Army unit was out on patrol when suddenly a burst of gunfire hit the point man, wounding him severely and throwing him to the ground. The other soldiers instinctively jumped behind a berm, taking cover while bullets hit all around with deadly accuracy. The wounded point man began crawling out in terror and pain for help, pleading for someone to please come and help him. Please come and help him. He was calling for his fellow soldiers and his mother, as dying men will do. After several agonizing moments, one of the soldiers threw off his rucksack, grabbed his M14, and started to climb over the berm. His fellow soldiers grabbed him by his ankles and pulled him back and said, "It's a trap. If you go out there, you'll get yourself killed and nothing else. They've got snipers. He's already dead. There's nothing you can do for him. It's a trap. There's nothing you can do." The wounded point man continued to cry out, pleading for someone to please come help him. Behind the berm, the young soldier could take it no longer. He grabbed his rifle again, leapt from behind the safety of the berm, and began a zigzag pattern under horrific fire, trying to get to his wounded brother. The soldiers behind the berm tried to lay down some suppressive fire, but the enemy had them pinned in a hail of gunfire that continued to rain down on the two men now out in the open together. As the gunfire continued relentlessly, suddenly at the top of the berm appeared the soldier carrying the now dead point man back to the security of the berm. The rescuing soldier was fatally wounded himself, and he was bleeding to death. As he lay there on the ground bleeding to death, his fellow soldiers went over to him and said, "Why? Why did you do that? Why did you throw your life away knowing he was dead already and there was nothing you could do for him? Why would you do that?" The wounded soldier looked up at him with his dying breath and he said, "Do you know what he said to me when I got to him?" He said, "I knew you'd come. I knew you'd come." Across America, people are going to hear your sirens and know that you are coming. Trapped citizens are going to hear your sirens coming in the distance and know that you will enter those burning buildings and rescue them without personal concerns, without concerns for your own welfare. I know that you will come. You will come because loyalty and service to those intuitively understood natural commitments does matter. Thousands of firefighters this year will extricate traumatized drivers. They will cross flooded rivers. They will enter collapsed and burning homes. You will come. Billy Fisk understood that his chances of surviving the Battle of Britain were few, but his loyalty to our values drove him on. Chris Engeldrum had a premonition that he would not survive his tour of duty with the 69th, yet he served loyally with bravery and distinction. Vince Lombardi once said there's lots of coaches out there with good ball clubs. They know the fundamentals. They have plenty of discipline, but they still don't win the game. They're missing the third ingredient. If you're going to play together, you got to care for one another. You got to love one another. And the love that I'm talking about is loyalty, which is the greatest of loves. In the fire service, that love, that loyalty for others gives us the confidence to complete our mission. That love, that loyalty assures each of us that no matter the risk, no matter the danger, whether it be a citizen or a fellow firefighter, we will come. Everyone in this room right now, you future elite members of the fire service should be standing a little taller because you are role models now to your fellow firefighters, to America, to men like me. You should be amazed that anyone would even question whether service and loyalty are still relevant in the fire service. We have answered this question 1,000,000 times over 1,000 years, and we will answer it 1,000,000 more. Millions have gratefully looked up at a rescuer and said, I knew you'd come. And that love, that loyalty was on display in 2013 by thousands of firefighters, millions of times, as did Joe Hofstetter, who on December 24th, 2013, while responding with the West Webster Fire District, was shot as he exited his car. Nearby, volunteer Fire Chief Mike Chaparetti and firefighter Joe Sardino lay shot dead in the cab of Engine 121. Hofstetter, though wounded in the back and legs, told other responding units to stay clear, saving the lives of numerous firefighters. We came loyally and courageously, as did firefighter Mike Janzenko of Kearney, New Jersey, who on January 20th, 2013, as firefighters were evacuating the top floor of a 3-story wood frame due to rapidly deteriorating conditions, got caught in a collapse. Barely escaping, he observed 2 other firefighters trapped beneath the burning debris. Firefighter Janzenko grabbed a corner, lifted the debris, pulled out a captain, and dragged him out of the building. He returned up those steps in brutal conditions, spotted a second firefighter, reached into that pile of debris, grabbed him by the boots, and dragged him out of the building. We will come loyally and courageously, as did Bryan, Texas Lieutenant Greg Picard, who on February 15th, as fire raged in a Knights of Columbus Hall and a partial collapse was occurring, led the RIT team of firefighters Manley and Moran, answering a mayday call from Lieutenant Wallace. While extricating Lieutenant Wallace, the fire experienced a sustained flashover. Picard, Manley, and Moran, just like Billy Fisk, were burning alive. And despite unimaginable pain, they never let go of Wallace. They continued to drag him until all 3 collapsed on fire 10 feet from the door. All 3 were horrifically burned, and Captain Picard died from the burns he received answering that mayday call. We will come because we are firefighters, because loyalty does matter. We will come because you will grow to love one another. We were shocked when we were asked if loyalty and service still mattered. We were shocked, and rightfully so. But no firefighter has ever been amazed or shocked when through the smoke and flames a citizen or a fellow firefighter has looked up at us and said, I knew you'd come. Thank you, and God bless the United States of America.